للأشجار ودفن للنفايات الخطر مما يتسبب بتدهور البيئة في هذه المنطقة، وأنه انتهاك واضح للقوانين الدولية. إن ما يزيد من حدة هذه الآثار الضارة هو الإجراءات الاقتصادية القسرية الأحادية الجانب المفروضة على الشعب السوري لجهة نقص حوامل الطاقة، الذي يدفع بعض الناس إلى اللجوء إلى قطع الأشجار بهدف التدفئة وتوقف تنفيذ عدد كبير من المشاريع الممولة دوليا والهادفة إلى حماية البيئة ومواجهة التغير المناخي. إن الجمهورية العربية السورية على الرغم من كل ما تقدم تابعت العمل والالتزام بإجراءات حماية البيئة ومواجهة التغير المناخي وإدماج البعد البيئي في خطط التنمية وإعادة الإعمار، والتزمت وما زالت بالاتفاقيات الدولية التي وقعت عليها في مجال البيئة والتغير المناخي. فقد تم اعتماد وثيقة المساهمات المحددة وطنيا وضمن الالتزامات اتجاه اتفاق باريس وتقوم بتحديثها واعتماد البرنامج الوطني للتغيرات المناخية في سوريا وخطة التكيف مع التغير المناخي وإحداث صندوق التخفيف من آثار الجفاف والكوارث الطبيعية، إضافة إلى اعتماد الاستراتيجية الوطنية للتحول نحو الطاقات المتجددة. أتمنى لهذا المؤتمر الهام النجاح في أعماله، وشكرا لكم.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency, Mr. Gaston Browne, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm before you not only as the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, but as a voice for small island states suffocating under the weight of a crisis we did not create. Our beautiful islands, once paradises on earth, now stand on the front lines of climate change, a war where we are the greatest casualties, although we are the least contributors to the conflict. We are facing an existential paradox. The smallest contributors to global CO2 emissions, yet among the hardest hit by climate catastrophes. This is not just an environmental crisis. It is a glaring testament to a world where profits are prioritized over people and planet. It is a world where oil and gas conglomerates, shielded by the power of wealthy nations, continue to reap astronomical profits, while the survival of nations like ours hangs in the balance. The irony is as bitter as it is unjust. The global community made promises in Paris, yet the pace of change is lethargically slow and dangerously incremental. We must confront this reality. If we breach the 1.5 degrees threshold, the consequences will be catastrophic, not just for small island states, but for the entire planet. The weapons of mass destruction of our time are not explosive devices, but rising temperatures, scorching droughts, and relentless sea level rise, all consequences of unchecked avarice and apathy. Our proposal for a carbon tax, backed by nations like France and Kenya, is not just a call for action, it is a plea for justice. We stand in firm support for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. It is time to curb the reckless exploitation of fossil fuels. Let me be clear. The path we choose today will determine the fate of generations to come. We call for bold, immediate actions, a relentless pursuit of the 1.5 degrees goal, substantial funding for loss and damage, and transformative financing that respects our vulnerability. We must act with the urgency this crisis demands, and we must act now. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Philip Davis, Prime Minister of Bahamas. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
I first wish to offer my thanks to the President and people of Dubai for the warm welcome and gracious hospitality you have bestowed upon us. My congratulations also to the people of the United Arab Emirates on the celebration of today, your National Day. We wish you peace and prosperity. Your Excellencies, time has run out. Thankfully, mercifully, the record-high temperatures experienced earlier this year in the Bahamas did not translate into a catastrophic hurricane season. We were lucky. But tropical storms and depressions did hit us. They caused high levels of rain, extreme winds, widespread flooding, interrupted our power supply, and resulted in significant costs and loss of revenue. Over the coming 6 months, before the next hurricane season begins, we can use the time to strengthen our National Youth Guard. We can build more homes out of the groundbreaking, carbon-negative, ocean-resistant concrete pioneered by a Bahamian company, Patana, headed by entrepreneur Rick Fox. We can also raise more finance using our blue carbon credits, backed by our extensive underwater fields of seagrasses, which absorb more carbon than the Amazon rainforest. We welcome the pledges made in the past 2 days at this COP to the Loss and Damage Fund. Surely, this puts beyond doubt the debate that the principle has now been settled: the polluter pays. But it has taken 30 years to agree that there should be a fund for loss and damage. And in 13 years, we have not yet hit the original pledge goal of $100 billion per year. So, how long must we now wait to have this new fund capitalized? And how long must we wait before we can access the funds? Time is a luxury we do not have. And so we're left wondering how we should interpret the pledges of this COP. So little pledged, given what is needed. So late in the day, given what is forecast. Is the effort here more to reduce the noise pollution generated by our advocacy, rather than to address the carbon reduction and climate financing so urgently needed? Are we expected to remain quietly grateful? Frankly, we do not understand why everyone does not share our sense of urgency. Doing what is needed to help us also helps you. Will you not act urgently to save yourselves? His Holiness Pope Francis recently exhorted those of us who are leaders to demonstrate the nobility of politics and not its shame. But our truths remain inconvenient and, to my mind, shameful. We still live in a world where financing always seems immediately available for the bullets and the bombs. This is a choice. We still live in a world where narrow economic interests continue to drive an increase in the burning of fossil fuels. This is also a choice. But we have no choice. Our plight is not seen in the images of women and children bleeding in the streets. Our plight is mostly invisible. The slowly warming seawater, slowly rising up through our porous limestone islands. The slowly dying coral, no longer able to support the slowly dying fish. By the time our plight is made visible for all to see, our luck will have run out. It will be too late. The storm will have passed. We can only pray that there is something left to see. Friends, we simply want to live.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Dalton Emani Makamau Tagelagi, Prime Minister of NIU. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam President, Walawalayatu Excellencies, distinguished guests and delegates, all protocols observed. To the President of COP28, let us stand in truth and in solidarity as we portray the common issues on climate change across our islands, territories, and continents. We will remain strong to fight and keep the 1.5 degrees alive. It's a defining moment for this COP28 to deliver what was promised, an allocation of $100 billion annually. Time is up, and urgent action is now needed to deliver climate finance for loss and damage, adaptation and mitigation. New Air is a net sink. It has no responsibility for the causes of climate change. New Air is at high risk of tropical cyclones this season and of drought. 19 years ago, we experienced Category 5 deadly storm. My people are living in fear of another catastrophic cyclone. Residents at low-lying coastal areas have slowly moved to higher ground to avoid detrimental impacts from damaging heavy swells. We are not quite adept as yet. We need resources, financials, and tools to ensure early warning, disaster preparedness, and climate resilience for Niue. We called on to expedite now access and release of climate finance. The delivery mechanism must be flexible, and the mortalities reflect the vulnerability of our islands. I applaud those who have made pledges here at this COP. Pledges must materialize today, not tomorrow. New Air has been very brave and innovative, as we have created our very own sustainable financing mechanism, our first public-private trust, the Niue Oceanwide Trust, and a world-first innovative financing instrument called an Ocean Conservation Commitment. This recognizes the value of our ocean space under a strict protection, and as a global contribution to planet stability, as well as the means to build resilience and the sustainable blue economy for our people. Our OCC represents the partnership between us and offers the willing to co-sponsor a 1 square kilometre of ocean in our large-scale marine protected area for a period of 20 years. This will help us mobilize sufficient, predictable resources to invest in a sustainable way to achieve outcomes in climate action, biodiversity protection, SDGs, and security at the same time. At the same time, we'll deliver invaluable climate outcomes for our region and the rest of the world. This is an example of a non-market mechanism under Article 6.8, which we invite others, in particular developed countries, to step up and support so we can actually secure the necessary climate finance we so desperately need and deliver this in a way that will make lasting gains for our people, the region, and the world. Niue contributions hold immense global significance in terms of supporting the long-term stability of our planet and its oceans. Without adequate mitigation, we will not be able to adapt. The global stocktake ensures our survival and our emissions pathways and targets for the future. Our national strategic plan is all about sustainable future that needs economic and social needs while preserving the environment, social stability, and of course our Niuean culture. Embrace the climate traditional knowledge, practices that have supported climate adaptation. We need to support I'm going to ask for your support of all countries and individuals represented here at COP28 to unite in solidarity with the people of Niue in our efforts to address the impacts of climate change and to safeguard a more stable future for Niue and the Pacific Blue Continent. Together, we can create a more profound understanding and foster a collective action towards climate resilience. Madam President, may I join the others in wishing His Highness and the people of the United Arab Emirates all the very best for their National Day today, and of course, their being a great host to us all. And thank you and God bless us all.
Thank you, Your Excellency. A kind reminder for the speakers to hold their speech within 3 minutes. And now it is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. José Ulisses de Pina Correia Silva, Prime Minister of Cabo Verde. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Senhora Presidente, Excelências, saúdo calorosamente o Sr. Ahmed Al-Jaber, Presidente da COP28, a quem formulo votos de muito sucesso. Acreditando nas evidências científicas, Cabo Verde tem a firme convicção de que ainda é possível que o planeta seja protegido do aumento de 1,5 graus centígrados até ao final deste século. O que tem que ser feito tem muita força. É a obrigação política de todos os países, de todas as lideranças, colocarem na primeira prioridade a materialização conjunta de soluções e compromissos acordados. O tempo é o fator crítico. A natureza vai seguindo o seu curso, reagindo às condições que o ser humano vai criando por ação e por omissão. Cabo Verde, enquanto CITES, localizado na região árida do Sahel e com ecossistemas muito frágeis, é dos países mais expostos a riscos e consequências de eventos climáticos extremos. Como CITES, encorajamos a definição clara e urgente de mecanismos de financiamento para perdas e danos. Reafirmamos a necessidade urgente de se adotar um índice de vulnerabilidade multidimensional nos critérios de financiamentos para os CITES. Subscrevemos a declaração da OASIS e do Grupo de Negociadores de África. A agenda climática enquadra-se nas prioridades de Cabo Verde, nas nossas prioridades. Para Cabo Verde, a redução da dependência de combustíveis fósseis e o aumento da eficiência energética é um imperativo de natureza económica, ambiental, climático e social. Tem impacto na balança de pagamentos, na redução de riscos económicos e financeiros face a choques externos, na redução de emissão de carbono e na redução da fatura energética, com impacto nas empresas e nas famílias. Atingiremos os objetivos e as metas da ação climática através da definição e implementação de políticas e estratégias integradas de longo prazo, um quadro jurídico e institucional robusto de governança climática, mecanismos de financiamentos e de transparência climática que envolvam o setor público, o setor privado e as parcerias público-privadas. Melhoria da literacia climática e implicação das comunidades locais. Investimentos públicos e privados na transição energética e na eficiência energética, na eficiência hídrica e na economia azul criam oportunidades para qualificação profissional, emprego digno e empreendedorismo dos jovens. São estes efeitos virtuosos que pretendemos, conjugando a redução de emissões com o aumento da resiliência, a sustentabilidade e a criação de oportunidades económicas. Com Portugal, celebramos um acordo de transformação da dívida bilateral em financiamento climático e ambiental. Demonstramos que, havendo vontade política e confiança entre as partes, podemos avançar com soluções estruturantes que conciliem a dívida com a redução das vulnerabilidades e a ação climática. A transformação da dívida em financiamento climático liberta recursos para investimentos com impactos virtuosos no aumento da resiliência e no desenvolvimento sustentável. Termino desejando que a COP28 seja traduzida por avanços significativos na assunção de compromissos e no reforço da capacidade de resposta aos desafios climáticos globais e urgentes. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Leo Varadkar, Prime Minister of Ireland. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. A Harja mar Kinera tá ragart down Aragnuli. Ní raibh lehéid riamh go bhfuil imrí uring ó Sard, tá uran ardú an dúchláin. Credim is féidirling. Excellencies, as leaders there is a profound responsibility on us and on our shoulders. Never before have the alarm bells been ringing so loudly. We must rise to the challenge, and I believe we can. We cannot prevent climate change. We're well past that point. But by acting urgently now, we can limit its extent and mitigate its worst effects. In mobilising our societies, we must recognise people's concerns and bring people with us, our farmers, our workers, our enterprises and our people. With the high cost of living and high energy prices, many worry about how much the transition will cost and what it will mean for their jobs and incomes and living standards. These are legitimate concerns and we need to hear them. We need to understand where people are coming from and offer reassurance. Change is difficult, but we must do everything in our power to make sure that the transition is just, protecting the vulnerable and leaving nobody behind. And we also need to do a much better job of explaining the benefits of climate action: a livable planet, cleaner air, new jobs and economic opportunities, a more secure world, less conflict over resources, more reliable and more affordable energy, and fewer people on the move from homes that cannot support them anymore. In Ireland, I lead a government that is committed to halving emissions by 2030 and to climate neutrality by 2050. We have a climate law and a carbon budget. We have a new infrastructure, climate and nature fund and a Future Ireland fund to help us meet the costs. And this will put billions aside for future investment for future generations. We have a carbon tax which incentivises the shift from fossil fuels with money ring-fenced to ensure a just transition, retrofitting our housing stock, installing EV charging points all over the country and helping farmers to adopt sustainable practices. And we have a new maritime area regulatory authority to oversee Ireland's renewable energy revolution and harness our vast offshore wind potential, powering millions of homes and businesses across the continent with clean, renewable energy. Ireland is a wealthy country, and even so we're struggling to make progress, and we're constantly looking at ways to improve. I'm conscious of the even greater challenges that others here face, particularly the least developed and small island developing states. So the Loss and Damage Fund must begin dispersing finance as soon as possible. Ireland will double our climate finance to at least €225 million a year by 2025, and this year we will invest close to 150 million. And today I'm announcing a contribution of 25 million to the new Loss and Damage Fund for 2024 and 2025. And we will make further contributions thereafter. So, dear friends, let us work together so the world has the financial firepower and the institutions and infrastructure it needs to make the journey that we need to make together. We have to prioritise investment in energy access and low-carbon development for the most vulnerable countries. This COP must also set us on a clear path to a safe and planned reduction of fossil fuels. Excellencies, Secretary-General Guterres has said that the challenge of turning a year of burning heat into a year of burning ambition is with us now. So together, let's rise to that challenge. Thank you very much. Gurmian Mahagav.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Philippe Joseph Pierre, Prime Minister of St. Lucia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam President, the world is in an uncharted territory. There is but a narrowing window of opportunity to secure a livable planet for all. With the climate crisis raging around the world, affecting not only small island developing states like St. Lucia and the members of the Caribbean community, CARICOM, but developed countries as well, we are here to join hands together, uniting as a collective to take ambitious action with a sense of urgency to course correct. We are here to ensure that every party answers our call at this COP to put us on a pathway that does not further compromise the futures of not only our particularly vulnerable nations, but all of our nations. The impacts have been devastating to our region. Loss and damage have struck at the core of our economies and our societies. At one extreme, lives and livelihoods have been lost. At the other extreme, our environment is under siege. We welcome the decision to at last make the Loss and Damage Fund functional and look forward to the pledges to make it a reality. We thank the UAE and Germany for taking the first step and look forward to other states joining. Madam President, it is a fact that the international financial environment is ill-suited to support vulnerable countries' access to affordable, sustainable, predictable, and scalable finance. To address these financial challenges, CARICOM states, including St. Lucia, are pursuing readiness projects to better access finance. We are also pursuing innovative financial initiatives from conservation bonds to disaster clauses and exploring new opportunities in carbon markets. We are pushing for a reform agenda for international financial institutions through the Bridgestone Initiative and other new economic measurements that will include our vulnerability, like the CDB's Recovery Duration Adjustment, the RDA. Mr. President, Madam President, we are nearing the 1.5 degrees centigrade warning threshold, and we must put people first before economic ratios and statistics. We must leave Dubai assured of three key messages. We leaders must commit to 1, pursuing 1.5 degrees centigrade pathways for just, equitable, and accelerated transition. 2, accelerate progress in implementation of the global goal on adaptation. Deliver transformative finance for a 1.5 degrees centigrade agenda. The time is now for world leaders to transform our world to a safer place for our children. And in this battle, Taiwan must not be left behind. Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Petteri Orpo, Prime Minister of Finland. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the United Arab Emirates for hosting this event. We need multilateralism now more than ever to take effective action against climate change and to ensure food and energy security. The science is clear. We are not on the track to limit climate change to 1.5 degrees. Global warming has already reached 1.2 degrees, causing widespread damage on all continents. Ongoing wars and violence in different parts of the world are only aggravating the impacts. COP28 marks the culmination of the first ever global stocktake. It is up to us now to act with urgency and determination and make clear political commitments to put us on track. Finland remains committed to supporting developing countries in their climate action. I would like to congratulate the esteemed host of this conference for the landmark agreement on the new fund to respond to loss and damage, and your generous pledge. It is crucial to expand the donor base for climate funding to include more countries on a voluntary basis. Finland stands ready to support the new fund with €3 million. We underline the continued importance of other funding mechanisms, including those supporting early warning system. We must also ensure that all financial flows are in line with the Paris Agreement and need to mobilise more private funding. In this, the coalition of finance ministers for climate action continues to play a key role. To put us on the right track to reach the Paris goals, the most crucial thing is a rapid clean energy transition away from fossil fuels. A just transition can help create new businesses and jobs and better opportunities for people everywhere. To enable the transition, we should agree on global targets for renewables and energy efficiency. These targets need to be accompanied by concrete steps towards phasing out fossil fuels and subsidies that support their use and recognising the role of the carbon-free technologies like nuclear. Government must work together within the multilateral system, but we also need broad collaboration with civil society and private sector. In Finland, we have set the ambitious goal to be carbon neutral by 2035 and carbon negative soon after that. This goal can be only reached with strong public-private cooperation. Finnish companies can also offer a variety of practical solutions to help reach carbon neutrality globally. We want our companies to expand their carbon handprint, meaning the positive climate impact that their products can have, and stand ready to share our expertise globally. My government is also committed to ensuring the preservation of natural capital as part of responsible economic policy, and we will work to halt the loss of biodiversity. Our aim is that others around the world can utilise our expertise related to positive nature handprints in addition to carbon footprints. Mr. President, we must show the world that we stand behind the commitments we made in Paris. Let's make sure this COP succeeds in getting us back to track for 1.5 degrees. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. President of COP28, let me first thank the UAE for its very hospitable welcome to all of us to this most important gathering. If now is not the time for bold action in addressing this planetary crisis, when the world is on fire, is being submerged, is barreling toward 2.7 degrees Celsius, when each day reveals grimmer death tolls attributed to climate, then when is? Are we prepared to accept this as our new norm? Our countries and our vulnerable communities cannot survive another round of inaction, nor should we accept this complacency. For SIDS, 1.5 to stay alive is still a must. Boldly, I joined the bastion of leaders from the Global South, in particular the Caribbean community, forced to the front lines of the climate crisis to demand greater accountability and responsibility. Our countries will be lost to the pages of history if nothing is done. Commendably, however, the Bridgetown initiative of my sister, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, will expedite equitable access, growth, and crisis response. And to the COP28 presidency, we welcome the capitalization of the Loss and Damage Fund. Our host country, the UAE, as it celebrates its 52nd Union Day, and we extend our heartfelt congratulations, is the clearest example of what it means to envision and deliver a resilient development. Action builds trust. This is necessary as we seek to narrow the widening gap between the G7 and the G77. I recall, Moderator, the situation of the Republic of China Taiwan, a reliable global partner in the climate crisis. St. Kitts and Nevis firmly believes that Taiwan as an island nation should be allowed to play a meaningful role in the existential policy drives of the United Nations. Moderator, with 50,000 plus people, our small size and notable position as the smallest independent nation in the Western Hemisphere presents opportunity. With the convergence of our geostrategic outlook, global collaboration, and focused investments, especially in our energy sector, we can become the first model sustainable island state to be found anywhere in the world, showcasing the path to progress and prosperity. Moderator, geothermal development in our Twin Island Federation allows for nationwide underground electric grid connection between our two islands. An investment of US $350 million over the next 5 years can ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis goes fully green with the capacity to provide clean energy to our neighboring countries. Recently, we renegotiated 40 megawatts of solar energy with battery storage capacity, which will ensure that there are redundancies built into our energy grid. We are acting, Moderator. Madam Moderator, our small nation has a GDP of just about $1 billion. While comparatively there are individual nations here that represent the combined GDP of every Caribbean island. However, our size does not dim our ambition. In fact, it stirs especially our choices, our pathway as our choices diminishes. And to wrap up, the transformation to a sustainable island state is so profound as it is linked to our survival, the survival of what it truly means to be Kittitian and Nevisian. And finally, I say, Moderator, let us all act to save ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency, Mr. Patrice Emery Torova Ada, Prime Minister of Sao Tome and Principe. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Altezas Reais, chefes de Estados e de Governos, Caros delegados, excelências, minhas senhoras, meus senhores, todo o protocolo reservado. É uma honra para mim estar aqui hoje. É inspirador ver a reunião de mentes dedicadas a uma causa comum e urgente, como a dos desafios das mudanças climáticas. Ao nos reunirmos nesse palco global, expresso a minha gratidão e de toda a delegação que me acompanha ao governo dos Emirados Árabes Unidos pela sua calorosa hospitalidade e os seus esforços louváveis na organização deste evento significativo. Aproveito para felicitar Sultan Ahmed Al-Jaber, o nosso presidente, e desejá-lo muito sucesso durante o seu mandato. O nosso mundo enfrenta uma encruzilhada histórica. As mudanças climáticas estão redefinindo nossas paisagens, nossa agricultura, provocando fome e guerras, favorecendo novas correntes migratórias, ameaçando ecossistemas vitais e colocando em risco comunidades inteiras. Cada tempestade, cada seca, cada inundação, cada incêndio, cada aumento do nível do mar é um alerta urgente para a necessidade premente de uma resposta global que infelizmente tem ficado somente ao nível dos discursos. A magia dos anúncios de $1.000 milhões jamais desembolsados já não funciona. Para países como o meu, preferimos continuar a advogar sobre a necessidade de reformas das instituições financeiras multilaterais para termos acesso a financiamentos e produtos financeiros mais acessíveis e em maior quantidade, e na adoção de programas de estabilização macroeconómicas mais realistas, menos ideológicos e mais suportáveis para as nossas populações. Preferimos contar com a força libertadora da criatividade e da inovação tecnológica e da inteligência artificial e lutar para não a transformar numa nova ferramenta de exclusão e de dominação. Preferimos, por fim, contar com os nossos próprios esforços e sacrifícios em primeiro lugar. Estamos aqui representando nações, comunidades e perspectivas diversas, mas a nossa missão, não nos esqueçamos, é singular, ou seja, é de promover soluções sustentáveis e ações colaborativas para a saúde do nosso planeta. As decisões e compromissos que fazemos aqui têm um peso imenso, não apenas para a nossa geração, mas para o futuro de toda a vida na Terra. Ao embarcarmos-nos nessas discussões vitais, devemos estar comprometidos todos com os princípios de sinceridade, solidariedade, transparência e inclusão. Que os nossos diálogos sejam guiados pela ciência e os dados científicos, que as nossas ações sejam impulsionadas pela urgência e as nossas resoluções reflitam a vontade coletiva de criar um mundo melhor, mais resiliente e sustentável. São Tomé e Príncipe, meu país, devido às suas características geográficas de país insular e arquipélago, tem as suas especificidades como uma pequena população, território fragmentado em ilhas, que impõem sérias restrições na economia à escala, na infraestruturação e na conectividade e cria uma elevada exposição aos choques externos e às vulnerabilidades ambientais. Como nação, assumimos as nossas responsabilidades. Estamos comprometidos com metas ambiciosas de redução de emissões e de investimento maciço em energias renováveis e iniciativas para preservar nossas florestas e oceanos. Permita-me destacar a dedicação inabalável de São Tomé e Príncipe em lidar com as mudanças climáticas e alavancar o financiamento climático para o desenvolvimento sustentável, entre os quais a nossa iniciativa de conservação de manguezais e criação de zonas de reserva especiais na ilha de São Tomé, para além da Ilha do Príncipe, que já é reserva mundial da biosfera. Excelências, minhas senhoras, meus senhores, hoje, mais uma vez, nessa COP28 em Dubai, reafirmamos o nosso compromisso em cumprir com os objetivos estabelecidos nos acordos anteriores. Reconhecemos que a transição para uma economia de baixo carbono não é apenas uma obrigação moral, mas uma oportunidade para o crescimento sustentável, a criação de empregos verdes, azuis e a melhoria da qualidade de vida para todos. É hora de nos comprometermos com uma mudança de paradigma onde a sustentabilidade e a prosperidade caminham juntas. Muito obrigado pela vossa atenção.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Alexander De Croo Prime Minister of Belgium. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have all come together here in Dubai at a crucial moment. For me, for Belgium, and for many people I've spoken to in the recent weeks, this COP is the most important one since Paris. Because it's high time to turn our words and promises into action. It is time to talk about solutions instead of problems. It is time to talk about hope instead of fear. In order to attain our goals, we need everyone on board. Governments, and even more so, our people and the private sector. Science tells us that unless there are immediate, rapid and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius will be beyond reach. Even those who don't believe in science can no longer close their eyes. The climate emergency is upon us. It affects, reverberates across the world. Every country needs to do its share. Within the EU, ambitious targets have been set for each country. There is no shortage of arguments today. There are plenty calls to action. Voices of our population, scientists, activists, court verdicts. All this comes down to one thing. It should motivate us to accelerate our efforts and to put all energy we have in realizing our commitments. There are many reasons to be hopeful. It's a fact. A record-breaking 340 billion euro have been invested in renewable energy globally this year. It's a fact. We finally made good on our pledge to mobilize $100 billion in climate finance. It's a fact that many climate analysts believe that carbon emissions will peak in the coming years. It's a fact. More and more people are on board when it comes to accelerate our actions. Young and old, with ideals and ideas, academics and entrepreneurs whose discoveries and technologies provide concrete and sometimes very simple answers to the challenges of recycling, water decontamination and greenhouse gas capture. My message to you is that the climate issue belongs neither to the deniers nor to the alarmists. It belongs to those who get up early, to those who grab every opportunity to contribute in speeding up the transition. If we want peak emissions now to reduce global emissions by 30% by 2030, we need ecology and economy. Too often, they have been opposed one against the other, while in fact, they are reinforcing each other. We will not build a climate paradise on an industrial wasteland. In our run to net zero future by 2050, we need clean tech, green chemistry, green steel production and green construction sites. The good news is that we are already building that future. Our North Sea wind turbines will produce enough green offshore electricity by 2030 to cover the equivalent of the electricity consumption of 5 million households. In Ghent, 1 billion will be invested to produce the most durable steel in the world. And from Liège, we are revolutionizing the hydrogen industry with cutting-edge technology. What we need now is a conducive environment to accelerate progress globally, phasing out fossil fuels. And in this regard, Belgium ended direct public finance for unabated fossil fuels and shifted resources towards renewables, which will be needed in order to triple renewable energy and double energy efficiency. We will only reach these goals when innovations and good practices will be accessible to everyone, to all SMEs, to all households in every corner of the world. In Europe, we need to create the right incentives to support our economy in realizing this ambition. As the incoming President of the European Union, this will be my priority. Europe will obviously not win the climate race alone. Partnerships are crucial, especially with Africa, which harnesses 40% of the global solar energy potential, and as stated by the President of Kenya at the African Climate Summit, has the potential to become the green engine of the world. Belgium has already partnered up with countries such as Namibia, Morocco and Egypt to accelerate this green revolution. In wind, in solar, in hydrogen. We have increased our climate finance to approximately 150 million euros, focusing our effort on biodiversity and sustainable development. In the Sahel region, we are implementing a 5-year, 50 million euros program supporting the Great Green Wall Initiative. We have launched innovative instruments such as Debt for Climate Swap. In Mozambique, such instruments will facilitate the implementation of the National Loss and Damage Strategy. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are only going to get this under control if we work together. And if our citizens engage in creating a more prosperous, a more inclusive and a healthier society. The most important result of COP28 that I would hope for is to create this dynamic of action and trust. Trust that we will be able to achieve the Paris Agreement goals. But for that, we need to scale up the solutions that are in front of our eyes and that we already have in our hands. Tripling renewables, doubling energy efficiency. It should be done, and it can be done. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Trinh Pham Minh, Prime Minister of Vietnam. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thưa đoàn chủ tịch, cho tôi chúc mừng Quốc khánh UAE và cảm ơn họ đã làm tất cả những gì có thể để cho thành công của hội nghị COP28. Thưa các quý vị, hệ thống khí hậu toàn cầu gần đến giới hạn đỏ. Trong một năm nóng nhất lịch sử, đương đại, băng đang tan nhanh chưa từng có. Nước biển dâng, hạn hán, lũ lụt, sạt lún. Ở nhiều nơi, cháy rừng đang trở nên tàn khốc hơn. Nhiều lãnh thổ, cộng đồng có nguy cơ bị ngập lụt, nhấn chìm. An ninh lương thực, an ninh năng lượng bị đe dọa. Thành quả phát triển có nguy cơ bị đẩy lùi. Bên cạnh đó, vấn đề già hóa dân số, cạn kiệt tài nguyên là những vấn đề cộng hưởng làm gia tăng khó khăn, thách thức cho toàn cầu. Khoảng cách giữa cam kết và hành động khí hậu vẫn còn xa. Sự cạnh tranh, chia rẽ phân tách, chiến tranh, xung đột, dịch bệnh càng làm phân tán nguồn lực cho biến đổi khí hậu. Sau 14 năm, chúng ta vẫn chưa đạt được cam kết 100 tỷ USD mỗi năm cho các hành động về biến đổi khí hậu. Vì vậy, việc đã nói là làm, đã cam kết phải thực hiện là chìa khóa để củng cố lòng tin giữa các quốc gia và khai thông bế tắc trong đàm phán về biến đổi khí hậu. Tác động của biến đổi khí hậu, dịch bệnh những năm qua càng chứng tỏ đây là vấn đề có tác động ảnh hưởng đến toàn cầu, vấn đề của toàn dân. Chúng ta phải có nhận thức, tư duy, phương pháp luận, cách tiếp cận mới, chủ động, tích cực, thiết thực, hiệu quả hơn và hành động thống nhất mang tính toàn cầu. Mỗi quốc gia phải có trách nhiệm quản lý, thực hiện hiệu quả, khai thác tối đa sức mạnh nội sinh của dân tộc mình là cơ bản, chiến lược lâu dài là quyết định. Kết hợp với sức mạnh đoàn kết quốc tế là quan trọng và đề cao chủ nghĩa đa phương. Lấy người dân, lợi ích chung toàn cầu là trung tâm, chủ thể, không để bất cứ quốc gia nào, người dân nào bị bỏ lại phía sau. Đa dạng hóa, huy động nguồn lực, kết hợp công tư, kết hợp trong và ngoài nước, song phương và đa phương và các nguồn lực hợp pháp khác, nhất là nguồn lực từ tư nhân. Các quốc gia phát triển phải tăng cường hỗ trợ hơn nữa cho các quốc gia đang phát triển và chậm phát triển, nhất là nguồn vốn ưu đãi, chuyển giao công nghệ tiên tiến, đào tạo nguồn nhân lực chất lượng cao, quản trị thông minh và hoàn thiện thể chế thị trường hiện đại, phù hợp, hiệu quả với từng quốc gia. Ngược lại, các quốc gia đang phát triển, chậm phát triển phải nỗ lực hơn nữa, không bị động, không trông chờ, không nghỉ lại, mà phải nâng cao năng lực tự cường, tự chủ, tự vươn lên với tinh thần không ai làm tốt cho mình hơn chính bản thân mình. Tuy nhiên, cũng cần đảm bảo công bằng, công lý về chống biến đổi khí hậu. Điều đó đồng nghĩa với đảm bảo tự chủ và an ninh năng lượng quốc gia, khả năng tiếp cận năng lượng sạch với chi phí phù hợp, hiệu quả cho mọi doanh nghiệp, người dân và mỗi quốc gia. Thưa các quý vị, Việt Nam với trách nhiệm của mình kể từ sau COP28 ở Glasgow, tình hình thế giới có nhiều biến động, khó khăn, thách thức nhiều hơn thời cơ, thuận lợi. Nhưng chúng tôi với trách nhiệm với toàn cầu và toàn dân đã thực hiện toàn diện các nội dung sau. Nhóm thứ nhất là xây dựng kế hoạch và tổ chức thực hiện chiến lược biến đổi khí hậu, chiến lược tăng trưởng xanh, quy hoạch điện 8, tiến đến năng lượng tái tạo và chủ đạo, phát triển công nghiệp năng lượng tái tạo và xây dựng hệ sinh thái năng lượng tái tạo như nhân lực, nguồn lực, quy hoạch, cơ sở vật chất và vân vân. Nhóm thứ hai, thực hiện đóng góp do quốc gia tự nguyện NDC, thành lập ban thư ký, công bố kế hoạch thực hiện và kế hoạch huy động nguồn lực thực hiện ZTP, ban hành và thực hiện kế hoạch phát triển 1 triệu hecta lúa chất lượng cao, phát thải thấp, nhất là khí metan. Nhóm thứ ba, xây dựng thể chế gồm xây dựng luật dầu khí, hoàn thiện luật đất đai, luật điện lực theo hướng hỗ trợ, kiến tạo, phát triển năng lượng tái tạo, đang xây dựng hoàn thiện nghị định mua bán điện trực tiếp, xử lý các dự án điện tái tạo và các vấn đề tồn động, vướng mắc cho người dân và doanh nghiệp trong quá trình chuyển đổi năng lượng. Thưa các quý vị, thời gian không chờ đợi, khó khăn thách thức ngày càng nhiều, phức tạp và khó khăn khó lường. Vì vậy, chúng ta đã đoàn kết rồi thì đoàn kết hơn nữa, đã nỗ lực rồi thì nỗ lực hơn nữa, đã hành động rồi thì phải hành động quyết liệt, hiệu quả hơn nữa, đã cố gắng rồi thì phải cố gắng nhiều hơn nữa. Vì sự phát triển thịnh vượng của cả nhân loại, vì sự mát lành của trái đất đáng yêu của chúng ta, vì sự ấm no, hạnh phúc trên toàn thế giới. Xin trân trọng cảm ơn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Ulf Kristersson, Prime Minister of Sweden. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Excellencies, colleagues. My two key words here today are urgency and opportunity. Urgency and opportunity. Urgency based on science and numerous alarming IPCC reports. Opportunity based on the new jobs and growth that the green transition brings. Sweden is an inspiring example of this, if I may say so. Since 1990, our emissions have been cut by more than 37%. At the same time, our economy has doubled. This is due to a few factors. One, an energy mix almost free from fossil fuels, with nuclear energy, hydro and wind as important pillars. But also an early and high tax on carbon dioxide. And innovative Swedish businesses. Swedish emissions per capita are now the lowest in the European Union, together with Portugal. The transition is exponential in sectors as steel, transport and heavy industry. The steel industry alone accounts for some 8% of global emissions. In 2021, Swedish industry produced the first fossil-free steel ready for delivery. And 3 of the world's leading climate tech companies are now Swedish, all present here, of course, at COP28. The green transition is not only necessary to save the planet, it is also vital for our own competitiveness. Reaching net zero by mid-century requires a rapid and complete phase-out of fossil fuels in electricity and, of course, in heat production. To succeed, it is crucial to increase production in all fossil-free sources, nuclear power included. Sweden is now taking concrete steps towards new nuclear capacity, and I'm happy to stand side by side with like-minded countries here at COP28 and in the European Union. Let me also stress the importance of what is taking place at the European Union level, as we are laying the ground for a green revolution with the climate package Fit for 55. The EU has not only put in place ambitious targets for 2030, we have also decided on binding legislation that will reduce emissions by 57%. This will define and incentivize national action across our 27 member states. It means that 450 million Europeans will adapt to a green transition. An enhanced and expanded emission trading system will put a cap on nearly all carbon emissions within the Union. The EU can now show the rest of the world how policies to reduce emissions can be combined with increased growth and increased welfare. Climate action requires global solutions. We might have different timelines and pathways to net zero, but our common goals are clearly defined in the Paris Agreement. Limit temperature increases to 1.5 degrees, build more resilient societies, and transform financial flows in support of those goals. Here, at COP28, we need to agree on an ambitious outcome of the global stocktake and the phase-out of fossil fuels. We need to send a strong call to all parties, G20 countries in particular, to come forward with new NDCs ahead of COP30 that are economy-wide, cover all gases and cut emissions faster in line with 1.5 degrees. We look forward to adopting the new framework for the global goal on adaptation. We will stand with the most vulnerable to operationalize the funding arrangements and the fund for responding to loss and damage. And we want to establish a space to accelerate the transition of financial flows. To the UAE presidency, thanks a lot for hosting us. To all parties, let COP28 be the COP where we unite, where we act, and where we deliver. To all civil society actors and businesses, we look forward to hearing your voices, inspiring us to do more, faster, and together. Let us embrace the urgency of climate action, but also all the opportunities. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And now it is my great honor to welcome His Excellency Mr. Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania, my lovely country.
I know that everyone is waiting to speak. I'm not sure anyone is eager to listen. But I have to tick my box, so sorry, bear with me for a few minutes. As a representative of the Republic of Albania, but also of a fast yet developing region in Europe, named the Western Balkans, I stand before you today to share a few thoughts. We all know that for decades, developing nations like ours have strived tirelessly to address the challenges of development while grappling with the adverse impacts of climate change. And yes, the Paris Agreement was a beacon of hope, a promise made by the world to safeguard our planet and its inhabitants. But however, the reality falls short of the commitments made. And to say it all, the burden of climate action continues to disproportionately fall on the shoulders of developing nations, despite our minimal contribution to the crisis, while the big polluters do their best to lecture us, but not to stop themselves. Anyhow, what we do is what we believe in, and we have committed to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions with 20.9% by 2030 and then achieve climate neutrality by 2050. Secondly, our country aims to become an energy leader in the region and a net exporter of energy by 2030. But you should know that Albania is one of the rarest countries that has no CO2 emissions from energy production. Of course, on the other hand, it is under an extreme high hydrological risk because we are dependent on climate, and so we are now in a full-scale diversification with solar and wind. Thirdly, Albania has progressed by implementing nature-based solution practices in the recent year, and this year Vjosa, the so-baptized last wild river of Europe, has been declared a national park in Albania. It was fun, though, because the bigger and the richer around us in Europe that have tamed all their rivers lectured us big time how important it is to have a wild river in Europe. Doesn't matter, fun is good, and our commitment is strong and real, so we did it, and we are fully dedicated to continue so. At the end, let me conclude with a special mention and thank wholeheartedly the gracious host country of this big event, UAE, and the leadership of this country, the visionary President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, who is showing to our community of countries what does it mean to connect words with deeds. And by saying goodbye to all of you, I wish we had more UAEs in our community of countries as to make the dark lighter and our journey brighter. Thank you very much.
It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Anwar ul Haq Kakar, Prime Minister of Pakistan. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
His Royal Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Distinguished Head of State and Government, Your Excellency Dr. Al Jabbar, President of COP28, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Our profound appreciation and gratitude to His Royal Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan for his visionary leadership and for hosting COP28, including the World Climate Action Summit. Excellencies, climate change is an existential threat for humankind. What science has forecast is happening. Last year, Pakistan suffered superb floods. This year will be the world's hottest year in recorded history. The global stocktake is another grim wake-up call. This must be a COP of action. Excellencies, at COP26 in Glasgow, we increased our ambition, presenting our revised nationally determined contributions with the target of 50% overall reduction in projected emissions by 2030. This year, Pakistan presented a comprehensive national adaptation plan and has also launched an innovative Living Indus initiative that brings together our care for climate and for nature. And we will be presenting our first biennial update report during this COP. Last year, we led the endeavor to craft an agreement on establishing a global loss and damage fund. This year, we work to activate an adequately financed loss and damage fund and its funding arrangements. It is critical that under UAE's leadership, COP28 also activates the means of implementation, that is climate finance, technology transfer, and capacity building for developing countries, based on the established principle of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities. Climate justice demands that the developing countries be enabled to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals even as they contribute to climate objectives. The provision of sufficient, additional, predictable, grant-based climate finance by developed countries is imperative. The 100 billion commitment for climate finance must be fulfilled. And such finance should not be at the cost of development finance nor add to the already high debt burden of the developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope the successful conclusion of the global stocktake will also provide a recipe for a global course correction, especially by keeping the 1.5 Celsius degree temperature goal within reach. Developed countries must take the lead in raising global mitigation ambition, commensurate with their economic standing and historical responsibility, and then help developing countries do the same. Finally, we need to achieve global resilience through delivering an ambitious outcome in the form of a framework for the global goal on adaptation, with clear targets and indicators, including regular monitoring of progress. At least half of climate finance must be allocated to adaptation. Excellencies, our expectations from COP28 are high but not unrealistic. Let this COP deliver with actions, not just words. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Najib Mikati, Prime Minister of Lebanon. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
حضرت دولة رئيس الإمارات العربية المتحدة سعادة الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة الحضور الكريم، بداية الشكر الكبير لدولة الإمارات العربية الشقيقة على استضافتها هذا المؤتمر والعمل الجاد خلال الأشهر الماضية لضمان التقدم نحو تحقيق الأهداف التي حددناها في باريس 2015 ومؤتمرات المناخ التي تلت. لا أستطيع أن أقف هنا اليوم كممثل للبنان ولا أتناول الحاجة الملحة لتعزيز قدراتنا الوطنية على الصمود، خاصة في المناطق التي تتقاطع فيها التحديات الناجمة عن تغيير المناخ مع الحروب، إذ يواجه لبنان عدوانا إسرائيليا يطال البشر والحجر ويتسبب بسقوط تأثيرات مناخية مكثفة، حيث تتعرض مناطق واسعة في لبنان من الآثار الشديدة للتدهور البيئي الناجم عن الأعمال العدائية الإسرائيلية المستمرة. لقد تسبب لقد تسببت الانتهاكات المستمرة بما في ذلك استخدام الأسلحة المحرمة مثل الفوسفور الأبيض التي إلى استشهاد المدنيين والأحرار لا يمكن إصلاحها بأكثر من 5 ملايين متر مربع من الغابات والأراضي الزراعية والآلاف أشجار الزيتون، مما أدى إلى تدبير سبل العيش ومصادر الدخل وتهجير عشرات الآلاف من اللبنانيين واللبنانيات. لقد بات لزاما علينا أن نعترف بهذه العواقب الوخيمة للحروب والاعتداءات العسكرية على البيئة، حيث من الضروري جدا معالجتها ضمن القوانين الدولية والقانون الدولي الإنساني. وأذكر أن رئاسة مؤتمر الأمم المتحدة المعني بتغيير المناخ COP28 تعهدت بتعزيز القدرة على التكييف مع تغيير المناخ في المناطق التي تواجه الحروب والأزمات والتهجير. وفي هذا الإطار فإن إعلان رئيس دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة سمو الشيخ محمد بن زايد آل نهيان إنشاء صندوق بقيمة 30 مليار دولار للحلول المناخية على مستوى العالم يشكل أمرا ضروريا ليس فقط للتخفيف من الآثار المباشرة والخسائر والأضرار الحاصلة، ولكن أيضا لتعزيز استراتيجيات المرونة والتكيف مع التغيرات المناخية. ومن الضروري توسيع نطاق آليات التمويل لمواجهة التحديات المتزايدة المتمثلة في الخسائر والأضرار وتوسيع نطاقها لتشمل إعادة بناء اقتصاد أخضر مستدام في لبنان. لقد عانى قطاع الطاقة لدينا مع الأزمات المتلاحقة، ومن ضروري تنشيطه وضمان تعبئة التمويل الكافي لتحديثه وتعزيز التحول نحو مصادر الطاقة النظيفة والمتجددة، وبالتالي التخفيف من الآثار السلبية لتغيير المناخ. أيها الحفل الكريم، بينما كنا نتداول بشأن الجوانب الحاسمة للتقييم العالمي والتكييف والتخفيف والقدرة على الصمود والتمويل، أناشدكم جميعا أن نتجاوز خلافاتنا ونتعاون لمصلحة الجميع ولضمان حياة أفضل للأجيال المقبلة. إن العالم يتوقع الكثير منا ومن العمل الذي سنقوم به هنا والقرارات التي سنتخذها اليوم. دعونا نخرج من مؤتمر الأمم المتحدة المعني بتغيير المناخ في الإمارات العربية المتحدة COP28 بإجراءات ملموسة والتزامات ثابتة لتمهيد الطريق نحو مستقبل مستدام للجميع. في الختام أقول: من بلاد الشيخ زايد الذي علمنا أهمية وكيفية التسامح والعيش معا، وبنى الإمارات على هذه الجذور، أقول: هنالك كبار سطر التاريخ أسماءهم بأنهم ساهموا في كتابة التاريخ، وأنا أقول لكم اليوم أن هناك كبيرا من أمتي ساهم في كتابة لم يساهم بكتابة التاريخ فحسب، بل ترك بصمات لا تمحى في كل الميادين، ومنها ما يجمعنا اليوم أيضا. وهذا الكبير وكان هو الشيخ زايد رحمه الله، وأطال الله بعمر الشيخ محمد بن زايد الذي يمضي على الخطى ذاتها. وشكرا لاستماعكم.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Irakli Garibashvili, Prime Minister of Georgia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Secretary General, Your Excellencies, Presidents and Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is a great honor and privilege for me to address you all on behalf of the government and people of Georgia. I would like to express profound gratitude to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the UAE, for generous hospitality and for hosting this important summit in Dubai. The United Arab Emirates is indeed a global role model of technological innovation and modernization, creativity and progress, and it is now championing the climate resilience efforts as well. Dear colleagues, visible impacts of climate change that become increasingly severe and have devastating effects on both people and environment require expedited progress towards climate resilience. It is my strong belief, therefore, that several major international efforts must be maintained to manage the climate crisis worldwide. These include reducing the global emissions by half by 2030 and maintaining the threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius in line with the Paris Agreement, contributing consistently to the Loss and Damage Fund, and adopting a framework to reach the global goal of climate adaptation. The promise of $100 billion a year in climate finance should be kept as well, as must be the commitment towards doubling the climate action finance for adaptation. We take our role in addressing the climate crisis seriously in Georgia and have already taken significant steps towards this end. Over $500 million was allocated for the climate mitigation and adaptation measures from the state budget of Georgia this year. Moreover, development of the national infrastructure is already taken into account, the low carbon and climate adaptation measures equaling to over $300 million a year. My government supports the idea of making Europe the first continent to reach a net zero emissions balance. With this in mind, we have adopted a long-term low emissions development strategy, declaring carbon neutrality as an important goal by 2050. Georgia also commits to presenting a new and more ambitious nationally determined contribution in 2025. In addition, I'm delighted to note that up to 85% of electricity comes from renewable sources in Georgia. However, further enhancement of our share of renewables energy remains a strategic priority for us, and I am pleased to announce that Georgia is joining the COP28 Global Renewables and Energy Efficiency Pledge. Dear colleagues, I strongly support the vision of the COP28's presidency for scaling up renewable energy to phase out the unabated fossil fuels. We believe that the formally negotiated outcome should include a commitment to triple renewable energy and double energy efficiency by 2030, along with an equitable phase-out of unabated fossil fuels. In conclusion, I am hopeful that during COP28, we will be able to live up to the unique moment together and deliver on a promise to shape a brighter, healthier and greener future for the generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Russell Mizo Dlamini, Prime Minister of Eswatini. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Heads of State and Government, Secretary General of the UN, the Executive Secretary of UN FCCC, Excellencies and colleagues, distinguished delegates. It is with great honor that I present this statement on behalf of the Head of State of the Kingdom of Eswatini, His Majesty King Mswati III, at this August gathering. Mr. President, after nearly 3 decades of commitments to combat climate change, all achieved is an increase in global emissions and temperatures. WMO has confirmed that 2023 is the warmest year on record, and the production gap report indicates that the commitments made remain just words. Fossil fuel usage remains high, much against the national plans. For instance, in Eswatini and the SADC region, trucks are queuing in large numbers at borders and harbors, carrying tons and tons of coal in transit to the developed world. While this continues, the use of nature-based mitigation is being promoted as though nature is responsible for the high atmospheric gas house concentrations. With such practices, reaching net zero by 2050 will be impossible, and developing countries should not be made to pay through the use of carbon markets. Mr. President, let us all meet our commitments as deep emission cuts are long overdue. The Secretary General has rightly noted that we are now past global warming and has reached global boiling. Those that have led the way in development and emitting should lead the way in mitigation. Technologies are necessary for attaining net zero and should be transferred to the global south. Resources have to be availed to assist countries adapt to the climate wrath being experienced and ensure that these match the national development agenda, which remain a great priority for developing countries. We further need to close the gap in resource flows to meet the actual need through urgent, predictable and sufficient financing, as well as ensuring availability of means of implementation. Furthermore, loss and damage is on the increase, with 2023 having seen a high number of weather and climate-related disasters across the globe. We therefore urge for the resourcing of the Loss and Damage Fund so as not to compromise the welfare and livelihoods of our people, as well as infrastructure development. Mr. President, prioritization of the above will ensure full implementation of the NDC commitments and national adaptation plans, of which Eswatini is currently finalizing. Mr. President, furthermore, all countries should be part of the agreements and commitments on climate action, as we are a global community and are commonly bound. If countries like Taiwan have voluntarily committed for the sake of the planet and people without being a party to the negotiations, then the rest of us can and must do more, and we call for Taiwan to be allowed to formally join in future UNFCCC discussions. In conclusion, Mr. President, no one should be left behind in making COP28 count and ensuring that all the green initiatives are sustainable and that are linked to the key pillars for economic development. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like to kindly remind to the speakers to hold their statements within 3 minutes. And now, it is my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ms. Robina Nabanya, Prime Minister of Uganda. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you warm greetings from His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and the people of Uganda. Uganda congratulates the United Arab Emirates for its exemplary leadership in convening COP28. Uganda is uniquely favored by nature compared to other parts of the globe because it lies across the equator and is between 621 meters and 5,011 meters above sea level. That's why it enjoys the sun, punctuated with plenty of rain all the year round. Uganda also has moderate temperatures of 19 degrees Celsius at night and 24 to 29 degrees Celsius during day. Some parts of Uganda actually have permanent snow, like Mount Rwenzori, which is right next to the equator. Uganda also has a massive plateau with large freshwater bodies, and that's why Uganda is called the Pearl of Africa. While Uganda's natural biodiversity presents important opportunities for adaptation and mitigation that can greatly contribute to the global reduction of greenhouse gas emissions of up to 24.7% by the year 2030, it is highly vulnerable to climatic shocks because of recent, in some parts of the country, we have experienced floods, Landslides and prolonged drought with rising temperatures, yet the country contributes only 0.01 of the global emissions. We therefore appeal to partnerships to offset these climate change costs. Uganda is mindful of the rampant degradation and the associated impacts escalating climate change. As a result, the government of Uganda has come up with policies to protect and preserve our environment and biodiversity. Since these provide global benefits in mitigating climate change, we invite partnership and support to protect and conserve these nature-based solutions to climate change. I note that recently, only 10% of the climate finances reach the local level. This is unacceptable. Uganda, therefore, supports the climate finance approaches in which at least 70% of the resources are allocated to locally prioritized climate actions while empowering the last mile communities. Uganda looks forward to COP28 establishing loss and damage fund that is accessible, free from bureaucracy of multilateral development banks, and free from the debt trap. The government of Uganda recognizes and welcomes the Glasgow Climate Pact of the multiple forms and stages of just transitions, and envision an orderly and phased energy transition that ensures the shift from fossil fuel to renewable energy minimizes negative consequences on workers, communities, ecosystems, and national economies for enhanced energy access and sustainable development. Finally, Your Excellencies, I would like to inform you that Uganda will be hosting the 19th Non-Allied Movement Summit from 15th to 20th January 2024, and thereafter the third South Summit, that is GIS 77 plus China, from 21st to 23rd January 2024 in Kampala, Uganda. On behalf of His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda, allow me to invite you to attend the said meetings. I look forward to receiving you in Uganda, the Pearl of Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ms. Borjana Cristo, Prime Minister of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Hvala lijepa. Poštovane dame i gospodo, danas smo ovdje svi zajedno kako bismo razmotrili ključna pitanja koja se tiču svih nas, pitanja koja utječu na našu planetu i buduće generacije. Nalazimo se u presudnom trenutku u povijesti čovječanstva. Klimatske promjene nisu samo pitanje za određene dijelove svijeta. One predstavljaju globalnu prijetnju koja zahtijeva hitnu, koordiniranu i odlučnu akciju. Bosna i Hercegovina također dijeli svoju predanost prelasku na održivu budućnost i pridružuje se ovoj važnoj raspravi o klimatskim promjenama. Svjesni ozbiljnosti ovog trenutka i izazova koji se nalaze pred nama, spremni smo sudjelovati u globalnoj borbi za očuvanje našeg planeta. I odlučni smo u ostvarivanju promjena koje će nas usmjeriti ka održivom sutra. Naši napori u borbi protiv klimatskih promjena su bezrezervni i prožimaju sve sfere našega društva. Posvećeni smo prelasku na obnovljive izvore energije s ciljem smanjenja emisije stakleničkih plinova i utjecaja na okoliš. Prelazak na obnovljive izvore energije nije samo imperativ, već i jedinstvena prilika za obnovljive izvore energije i za izgradnju održivijeg, ekonomski stabilnijeg i ekološki osviještenog BiH društva. Kroz ulaganje u tehnologiju obnovljivih izvora energije i poticanja inovacija, Bosna i Hercegovina želi biti partner u globalnim naporima za smanjenje emisija stakleničkih plinova i ublažavanje klimatskih promjena. Bezrezervno podupiremo sve globalne inicijative i napore usmjerene na održivost i zaštitu okoliša. Podržavamo i slijedimo smjernice i preporuke koje su proizišle iz inicijativa Ujedinjenih naroda, poput ciljeva održivog razvoja Ujedinjenih naroda i Pariškog sporazuma o klimatskim promjenama. Uspostavljamo i provodimo koncept zelene agende za Zapadni Balkan kao strategije za usklađivanje okolišnih politika država Zapadnog Balkana sa Europskim zelenim planom i prelazak na održivo gospodarstvo, odnosno implementaciju njenih 5 stupova, dekarbonizaciju, kružno gospodarstvo, smanjenje onečišćenja, sastavnica okoliša, održiva ruralna područja, zaštita i obnova bioraznolikosti i ekosustava kroz provedbu mjera predviđenih akcijskim planom za provedbu Sofijske deklaracije. Kako bismo postigli ciljeve zelene agende, potrebna je suradnja, razmjena i znanja i tehnologija te podrška međunarodne zajednice. U tom smislu odlučni smo da preuzmemo odgovornost i pridružimo se zajedničkim naporima za stvaranje održive budućnosti za sve nas. U tom smislu smo opredjeljeni i odlučni, želimo se aktivnije uključiti u globalne napore za očuvanje klime, surađujući i sa drugim zemljama te dijeleći pozitivna iskustva i resurse za postizanje nama zajedničkog cilja. Stoga Bosna i Hercegovina odgovorno se pridružuje Emiratskoj deklaraciji o otpornim prehrambenim sustavima, održivoj poljoprivredi i klimatskim akcijama, koja predstavlja važan korak prema globalnom partnerstvu, a koje je ključno za suočavanje sa izazovima koje donose klimatske promjene. Kao odgovorna članica međunarodne zajednice prepoznajemo i žurnost potrebe za zajedničkim djelovanjem kako bismo sačuvali našu planetu. Pridružujemo se Emiratskoj deklaraciji i šaljemo snažnu poruku solidarnosti i zajedničke odgovornosti za očuvanje našeg planeta. Pozivamo i sve druge zemlje da se pridruže ovom globalnom naporu kako bismo zajedno stvorili održivije, otpornije i prosperitetnije društvo za sve nas. U ime Bosne i Hercegovine još jednom potvrđujemo našu predanost i spremnost kao i želju za aktivnom suradnjom u borbi protiv klimatskih promjena, a vjerujem da samo zajedno kao globalna zajednica možemo ostvariti značajne napore i sačuvati naš planet za našu budućnost. Hvala vam.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ms. Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States of America. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. It is my honor to be with the distinguished leaders who are here today. 2 years ago, President Joe Biden stood on stage at COP26 and made a declaration of ambition. The United States of America will once again be a global leader in the fight against the climate crisis. Since then, the United States has turned ambition into action. President Biden and I have made the largest climate investment in the history of our country, and some have said the world. Roughly $1 trillion over the next 10 years. As a result, today, across the United States, we are building and expanding hundreds of solar panel, wind turbine, electric vehicle, and battery manufacturing plants. We are laying thousands of miles of high-voltage transmission lines to deliver clean energy to every corner of our nation. And we are lowering emissions, not only in energy and transportation, but in industry, agriculture, buildings, and construction. We are also investing in resilience and adaptation to restore our coastlines, wetlands, and forests, and to make communities more resilient to climate-driven extreme weather. We have also placed equity at the center of all of our work, investing in marginalized communities, which are often hardest hit by extreme weather and bear a disproportionate burden from fossil fuel pollution. Globally, the United States is a leader in the effort to expand international climate finance. This year alone, we have increased our contributions to over $9.5 billion, which puts us on track to reach President Biden's ambitious $11 billion goal by 2024. Today, I am also proud to announce a new $3 billion pledge to the Green Climate Fund, which helps developing countries invest in resilience, clean energy, and nature-based solutions. Today, we are demonstrating through action how the world can and must meet this crisis. This is a pivotal moment. Our action collectively, or worse, our inaction, will impact billions of people for decades to come. For as much as we have accomplished, there is still so much more work to do, and continued progress will not be possible without a fight. Around the world, there are those who seek to slow or stop our progress. Leaders who deny climate science, delay climate action, and spread misinformation. Corporations that greenwash climate inaction and lobby for billions of dollars in fossil fuel subsidies. In the face of their resistance, and in the context of this moment, we must do more. In order to keep our critical 1.5 degrees Celsius goal within reach, we must have the ambition to meet this moment, to accelerate our ongoing work, increase our investments, and lead with courage and conviction. Even given the challenges we face, I am optimistic. With ambition and bold action, I know we will build a cleaner, healthier, and more prosperous world for this generation and for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Stephen Ligamamada Rabuka, Prime Minister of Fiji. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon. May I join with all my colleagues and on behalf of the President of the Republic of Fiji and the people of Fiji, congratulate UAE on your 52nd National Day. Congratulations. And we thank you for your hospitality. We thank you for the reception we have received and everything you have done for us since we arrived here a few days ago. Ladies and gentlemen, 31 years ago, I was Prime Minister of Fiji. We sent a minister to attend the very first Earth Summit held in Rio. A few years after that, those that attended that summit we formed ourselves into a conference of parties. And we're here at the 28th Conference of Parties, or COP28. What have we done in 28 years, or 31 years? It seems to us in the Pacific that we have not done enough. We are sinking. The cyclones are getting more severe. Earlier this week, there was a flood in Fiji. Areas that never used to be flooded were flooded. And after that, we recorded temperatures more than 10 degrees more than our average for this time of the year. Since 1992, emissions have dramatically increased at a rate that destines us and the world that we live in to destruction. The rate of emissions is a core metric to take stock and respond to. Climate change in the Pacific is a major threat to our very own existence, our survival, our identity. It is clear that we are at a breaking point for survival of not only the Pacific, but for humanity. And for that very reason, I will continue to champion my call for the Pacific to be a zone or an ocean of peace, which includes our collective responsibility to combat climate change and preserve the environment. The environment is our life in the Pacific. I believe that a transformational response is needed. These include just transition that ensures global emissions peak before 2025. This will require deep cuts to emissions that align with the target of keeping global average temperatures rise to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. From last week's recorded temperatures in Fiji, I do not know whether we are going to achieve that. But I call upon all of us to strive towards that. Otherwise, we'll be under the sea. Otherwise, it'll be too hot to live in the tropics. We must ramp up our adaptation. We must double up on our finances by 2025 and agree on a framework for the global goal on adaptation. I welcome the Presidency's commitment to finalize the adoption of the GGA framework by the end of this COP28. We welcome the progress this week on the work on loss and damage fund. We urge the fund to be more targeted to the special challenges confronting small island developing states, because we are the most exposed and most vulnerable. It's estimated that $4 trillion will be needed annually by 2030 to manage the impact of climate change. There needs to be a Herculean effort to mobilize financing and investment that is accessible and cost-effective in delivering benefit to all. For us, it is our survival. We call upon every one of us to please cooperate for our survival, for our identity. I do not know which COP will not have any representation from the Pacific. I hope we will continue to have representation from your Pacific friends, brothers and sisters. So let us cooperate and conserve the universe that we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome now His Excellency Mr. Ralph Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam Chairperson, Your Excellencies, overwhelmingly and correctly, the global community has the settled view that human beings, by their acts of commission and omission, have been causing and are accelerating dangerously a climate change crisis, which portends an enveloping global disaster for life, living, and production. Essentially, human beings are sleepwalking into a disaster of historic proportions. Nothing that has been proposed so far at this conference of parties has risen to the level of urgency and scale of the transformation required or demanded to to avert the impending debacle for humanity. The leaders of the countries which are the major emitters of greenhouse gases know it. The profiteering barons, corporate barons globally know it. The informed population of our planet know it. And we in the Caribbean know it quite well because we feel it. So too the world's poorest people who experience daily the consequences of calamitous climate change. They know it very well. Yet we continue to tinker here and there with paltry initiatives and then celebrate them falsely as epoch-making and transformative. We may fool ourselves. We cannot fool nature. Humanity is facing a metaphoric chasm, a sprawling divide between what is required and what is being timidly advanced. We cannot cross this chasm by baby steps. If we seek to do so, we would fall below and beneath the widening gorge. Saving humanity from the disaster of man-made climate change is a great cause. And great causes have never been won by doubtful men and women. We know that the planet cannot much survive beyond global warming in excess of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. On present course, humanity will exceed this target soonest. We know the compelling answers to this existential challenge, but we recoil from embracing them and acting upon them. You're not going to get the details from me here, you know them. Everybody knows them. In any case, in any great cause, the answers or solutions revolve around 4 critical requisites. Nothing is possible without people. Nothing is doable without high-quality strategic leadership. Nothing is achievable without the mobilization of a sufficiency of resources. And nothing is sustainable without specially crafted institutions to deliver the transformative results agreed upon. We have been not involving the Earth's people in an informed and structured manner. The planet's leadership on this existential matter has been, by and large, very uneven and shows currently little sign of improving. The resources which are available among the rich countries and the rich people of our planet have not been mobilized in any sufficiency for the tasks at hand. And the global institutions to address the haunting bundle of sustainable issues are in a ramshackle condition, and there is currently very little likelihood of their efficacious reform to make them fit for purpose. Unless we address collectively and in solidarity each of these considerations optimally, humanity as we know it is doomed. This is not the usual end of times doomsday scenario of inevitability grounded in religious prophecy. In this great cause, it is necessary and desirable to apply the Aristotelian proposition: equity among equals, proportionality among unequals. The rich and powerful countries have a huge obligation to right the historic and current wrongs. We, the metaphoric unwashed multitudes, must in solidarity insist on that, and at the same time do our part responsibly and urgently. Justice and solidarity are thus to be combined. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Distinguished heads of states and governments, dear delegates, thank you for your statements. And this brings us to the end of the high-level segment. The joint third meeting of COP28, CMP 18 and CMA 5 is now adjourned. Distinguished delegates, the conference will now hear 2 special messages. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Teo Chi Hin, Senior Minister, Coordinating Minister for National Security, delivering a message of His Excellency, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, Prime Minister of Singapore. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this distinguished gathering. Mr. President, amid heightened geopolitical and economic turbulence, the world is on a pathway to 2.8 degrees centigrade of global warming by 2100. The first global stocktake presents an opportunity for the world to course correct to keep the target of 1.5 degrees centigrade within reach. Singapore reaffirms its commitment to domestic climate action, regional partnerships, and global collaboration. First, domestic climate action. Singapore is a small island state, like the speakers before me. We are just 40 kilometers east to west, 25 kilometers north to south, and our 5.6 million people have nowhere else to go if sea levels rise. So we have to take this very seriously. Singapore raised its climate ambition last year to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. We are now focusing our efforts on implementation and delivering progress. We will raise our carbon tax level to around $19 per ton of emissions in 2024 and progressively to $37 to $60 per ton by 2030, making it one of the highest in Asia. We have mandated zero vehicle population growth since 2018, and our vision is for all vehicles to run on cleaner energy by 2040. In spite of being alternative energy disadvantaged, Singapore is sparing no effort in greening our power sector. We are already halfway towards achieving our 2030 solar deployment target. From 2024, we will also require all new and repowered natural gas power plants to be at least 30% hydrogen compatible by volume. Second, regional partnerships. We must foster partnerships and channel finance to accelerate regional decarbonization. At COP28, Singapore will announce Financing Asia's Transition Partnerships, or FAST-P, a new blended finance initiative that aims to mobilize up to $5 billion in finance. FAST-P will bring together public and private sector platforms and partners to de-risk and finance transition and marginally bankable green projects in Asia. As a first step towards a joint vision of an ASEAN power grid, Singapore plans to import around 4 gigawatts of low-carbon electricity from the region by 2015. We must also collaborate to strengthen our collective global climate resilience. Singapore participates actively in partnerships to advance flood, water, and heat resilience, as well as coastal and flood protection. To support mutual learning, Singapore will share our regional climate projections based on IPCC's 6th assessment report. Third, global collaboration. Multilateralism at platforms such as UNFCCC remains key to ensuring a just and inclusive transition. Singapore is pleased to support the following initiatives: the Global Renewables and Energy Efficiency Pledge, Early Coal Retirement Initiative, and Forest and Climate Leaders Partnership. We stand at a critical crossroads. Let us face climate change not as individual nations, but instead seize this opportunity to unite, act, and deliver. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And now it is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Cho Hang-sik, Special Envoy, delivering a message of His Excellency Mr. U Soo Kim, President of the Republic